So I read a lot of chunky fantasy books. I'm currently reading Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb, and I am having a great time with it. There will be a full video on that when I finish it. But I also have a backlog of fantasy novellas I would really like to read, so I thought it would be fun to do a 48-hour reading challenge and see how many novellas I can read in that time. So that's my weekend plan. I'm going to just read fantasy novellas. And the first novella I am planning on reading is In the Shadow of Their Dying by Michael R. Fletcher and Anna Smith Spark. Now this is a grimdark novella, and I don't read that much grimdark, so I'll certainly be intrigued by how dark it gets given the two authors behind it. I'm going in pretty blind to the premise. All I know is it's about 3 assassins, or the third best assassin? The third best assassin, a second-rate mercenary crew, one terrifying demon. That's all I know about it. However, what I did hear was that Michael R. Fletcher and Anna Smith Spark kind of went back and forth with, this is a really dark chapter. No, I can go darker than that. No, I can go darker than that. So I do think that this is going to be a particularly dark, grimdark novella. According to Goodreads, it's about 143 pages, so I should be able to get finished in the first half of today and get onto a second novella in the afternoon. But this was the novella that was kind of the instigator behind this video because I really want to read it. So I'm looking forward to it. But first, coffee. So I am about halfway into In the Shadow of Their Dying. This is not what I thought it was going to be about. It's a really weird story. It's so chaotic and bizarre, and the writing really reflects that as well. Because it's a novella, I don't want to give too much away, but a very basic premise is that we are following the third best assassin in this city. And this city is currently under siege, and the enemy is sitting right outside, and they're throwing alchemical magics and fireballs and all sorts into the city. And the third best assassin is hired to kill the king. And as well as this third-rate assassin, we also have this demon point of view, which I think is very interesting to follow. The writing is very dark and visual and pretty grim, particularly in the demon point of view chapters. And this demon isn't that familiar with humans and how to work, so watching it sort of try and function and chase down people and kill people and how it reacts to people is very interesting to read. For my personal taste, the writing can be a bit much sometimes. I feel like it's just very indulgent. We spend an awful lot of time with very little movement in a character's head, particularly in the demon's point of view chapters. And I want to see what happens next. I want this to keep going. So that's my minor gripe with this so far, but I'm still really enjoying it. And oh boy, was I right, it is so dark. The writing in particular and the description work, is pretty dark. Plot-wise, this is absolute chaos. There is so much going on, and it's so non-linear. It's bizarre the way that the point of view chapters interweave, and sort of this very bizarre structure to the novella, but I think it works really well because it is such a bizarre situation and messy story. I don't think that the story's messy, but I think it's written in a messy way to tie in with the chaos of the narrative, and I think that works really, really well. And also, as a very quick side note, part of this story takes place in the Dripping Bucket Inn, and if you don't know what the Dripping Bucket Inn is, it is an inn that Michael R. Fletcher created and said other people can include it in their work. And the whole idea is creating this franchise between fantasy books of this franchise inn. So if you've read a book and you read The Dripping Bucket, that's come from Michael R. Fletcher and this idea of a franchised inn, which I think is hilarious and I love it so much. So much so that there is actually a Dripping Bucket in Harbinger of Justice, my book. But I love it. It's such a cool idea. So I'm really looking forward to see how this all wraps up because it's so unpredictable. Even by chapter 2, I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen. I have no idea what's going on, and I'm just strapping in for the ride. So I'm going to take a bit of a break and then finish this later, and then we can hop into novella number 2. And also, Meg is chilling with me. She's my reading partner. So I finished In the Shadow of Their Dying, and my thoughts are very similar to the middle. The ending is really, really good. It continues to be chaotic and insane and pretty dark. I actually think the second half is better than the first half. It's just complete chaos. It is really a ton of fun, and I start to really get into the characters because it is a novella and we do jump about POVs. You do get bits of all the different characters, but the third rate assassin, or third best assassin, is the one that you follow the most, and I've grown to really quite enjoy following his character. Not a good person, very entertaining read. And I was surprised with the world building. There was quite a lot to this. I really liked all the different elements that kind of got hinted at this deeper world. So I'm really hoping that Michael R. Fletcher and Anna Smith Spark revisit this if they haven't already. I don't know if this is based in one of their worlds already or if this is completely new, but I hope we get more of it. I really enjoyed the different elements and sort of this hinting of this world building and this demon point of view and all these like ancient creatures and this horrific magic thing that I don't want to ruin because it's such a fun thing to read. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. Dark, unpredictable, chaotic, and just a good time. And Grimdark Magazine were kind enough to send me 2 extra copies of this physical arc. There are only 100 printed, so I'm able to give away 2 of them, and I'm doing that over on Instagram just because it's easier to facilitate than on YouTube. So if you want a physical copy of In the Shadow of Their Dying, one of these early arc copies, head over there and you can join the giveaway. And it is a beautiful cover and beautiful edition. I really like the art on this. Carlos Diaz. Looks like I've got another artist to follow on the internet. I have also started novella number 2, which is The Kraken's Tooth. Now this is a sequel novella to The Pilgrimage of Swords, which I read last year and I loved so much. So I'm trying not to do the classic Andrew of reading book 1 and then forgetting to go back. So I was like, okay, this time I'm going to continue on book 2. It's a novella. It's a series of novellas. Now, this series of novellas is called the 7 Swords series. It's to do with these 7 swords that are demon cursed, which means they have a demon living inside them. It's very Michael Moorcock, Nightblood from Brandon Sanderson's work. That sort of setup where the sword can talk to its wielder, which is a dynamic I really, really like. If you read my book, Harbinger of Justice, you know it has a similar dynamic, but not with a weapon. So in the first book, I really liked the banter between the sword and the main character Pilgrim, and I'm hoping we get more of that in this second book. I'm only on chapter 2, so I've only just started it, but I'm really enjoying it so far. I love Anthony Ryan's prose style. It's just super clean and easy to read and just flows really well. And one of my complaints with the first novella is I didn't feel overly connected to the characters, mainly because we didn't really delve that deep into them. But going into this, the fact that I already have some backstory, I do feel a wee bit more connected than I did at the start of Pilgrimage of Swords. So I'm hoping that we get more of the characters' backstory and just learn about them as people. I love the world in this idea of 7 demon-cursed blades, and just this fantasy feelings in this series. It just follows the rule of cool. I mean, in the first book, they were going across this whispering waste, which was this like big desert where there was whispers from these ghost-like creatures on the winds. It was just classic fantasy fun, and I'm hoping we get more of that in novella 2. So I'm going to read that tonight, see how far I can get into it, hopefully finish it tomorrow morning, and then we'll see if we can fit in one more novella, maybe 2, probably only 1, but we'll see. I really enjoyed it. It was really good. I will say it's very similar to the first one, especially structurally. It has this sort of, we're meeting some new characters that we don't really know much about them, and you're going into this ancient place that hardly anyone's ever visited to retrieve some item or speak to someone to end this little quest. And on the way we learn more about the other travelers who are with Pilgrim and more about Pilgrim himself. And that's exactly what happened in this as well. So that was my one complaint, is it's very similar to the first one. I do wish there was a wee bit more variation in the structure. So I'm hoping the third one is a little bit different. That being said, I enjoyed the first one, so needless to say, I really enjoyed this one too. It was a ton of fun. It just feels like bite-sized epic fantasy, and it just has all the things that I really like. It's this whole, this ancient place and this magical artifact and learning more about these different worlds. And I do like this meeting a new character in different locations, or a new group of characters in different locations. It feels very One Piece in the way that we're moving to a new place, we meet a new character, and we kind of have a bit of their story in this location. And I actually really like that structure itself. As I predicted, we got more of Pilgrim and his backstory, which I'm super happy about. It's really fleshing him out as a character, as well as the secondary character that I don't want to talk about. But it's really good to see more of his past and really deepen him as a person. So I will definitely be continuing on to the third book in this series of novellas, and I highly recommend it. It's a ton of fun, especially because it feels like you're reading an epic fantasy. A lot of novellas have a lot more quiet world building. That's not the right word. I am an author. Subtle world building, and the focus is very much on the story or on the characters, because there isn't a lot of time to build up all this world building unless it's a novella connected to a bigger series. However, this novella series does a really good job, because one, it has more than one novella to build up this world, but also just the way it's structured, you don't need to know that much about the world to really make it feel fantastical and very deep. This series would be really good if you're in a reading slump, this very classic fantasy feeling, and sort of it really immerses you, but then it's still a tight-knit story, and you can flew through it, you can fly through it. I can't speak today. You can fly through it in a couple hours, but you still get that fantasy feels. So I am going out this afternoon, but I do think I could squeeze in one more novella. And there is one I have that's quite short that I think I could read just tonight. Ding. So recently I got The Price of Power by Michael Mitchell. Now this is a full-length novel, but there is a prequel novel. There is a prequel novella even, and it's short. It's only about 55 pages, so I could definitely read that tonight. And I'm really excited about the full-length novel, so I think this will be a good introduction into the world. And you can get the ebook for this completely for free by signing up to Michael Mitchell's newsletter. So if you want to check it out, you can do completely for free. I do love this trend with indie authors of having a prequel novella that you can read first, just to try out an author's prose style or storytelling style. It's something that's become a lot more popular in recent years, and a lot of indie authors are giving them away completely for free for joining up to their newsletters. I am planning on doing the same with my book. I'm writing a novella called Silence is Silver. It's going off the editor, and that'll be completely free if you sign up for my newsletter once it's out. But it is a trend I am a big fan of, getting to try out all these different authors and seeing which series will work for you. It's just huge to try and help decide what I'm in the mood for when there's so many amazing books out there. So I finished War Song, and while this was definitely the shortest of the three, it was not lacking in depth or interest at all. I was so impressed with how Michael handled such an interesting character and story and arc, all within about 50 pages. This was by far the most character-driven of the three I read. It follows a guy called Admar who lives in this country that is under occupation of this other, more tyrannical people. And it's him facing some of the realities and just this feeling of absolute desperation and uselessness because he feels like he can't do anything to fight back. And it really leans into this theme of hope and giving up, and sort of bounces between them, and the whole time, because it is a grimdark story, like, he might just give up, and I'm not going to tell you if he does or doesn't, but there is very this will he, won't he just give up, This is very much a grim, dark story. It's a different style of grim than In the Shadow of Their Dying. They're both very much grim, dark stories, but this follows certain characters who are a wee bit more upbeat about how down and terrible everything is, whereas this follows someone who is pretty much given up from the start. And it's interesting that grimdark can work so well in both ways. I don't think one is better than the other. It's definitely just a different style, but it did make this a bit of a downer to read for bits of it. You're like, oh man. Ugh. Because it is so short, I can't really go too much into detail. However, I really did have a blast with this. It's super short. It's only 50 pages. It's technically a novelette rather than a novella, but most people don't use the term novelette. I really like the writing style in this. I really liked the character work. I think the character work was the real draw for this. I feel like I was really in Admar's head. So much so that I really wanted this to be a little bit longer if it was maybe a proper novella rather than a novelette. I really would have liked to have delved deeper into his different parts of his story in this novelette. It does cover a chunk of time. It covers a couple months of time, but I really would have liked to have delved deeper into just some of the activities of his day-to-day life. But it's a novelette. This is me being greedy. That being said, it did feel like there wasn't really any padding because of that. It was a very quick through, flowed well story because there was none of this excess fat that I thought might need trimmed off. It was very just a concise story. The good thing is I can now move on to his full-length novel, Price of Power, which is the sequel to this that happens, I think, 6 or 7 years later. So I'll definitely be checking that out. Now to see how many pages I read in a 48-hour period. It is nighttime, but I'm not planning on doing any more reading tonight. I don't think I'll be able to read another novella, and I don't want to start one and finish it tomorrow. So let's see how many pages I read. In the Shadow of Their Dying is about 143 pages, according to Goodreads. The Kraken's Tooth by Anthony Ryan is 136 pages, according to Goodreads. And I know I do have the physical right here, but let's look at Goodreads and see how many pages it says Warsong has, just to keep this completely fair. According to Goodreads, it has 87 pages. So in total, for about this 36-hour period, but I'm calling it 48 because it sounds better, 366 pages, which is a lot for me. I know other readers can fly through that way quicker than I can, but for someone who averages it about 50 pages a day, this was a lot of reading. And a quick reminder that I am doing a giveaway of 2 of these physical arcs that there was only 100 ever printed over on Instagram for In the Shadow of Their Dying. And this does release on the 19th of March. So definitely check it out if it sounds like something you want to read. Kraken's Tooth should be on Amazon. However, you need to read A Pilgrimage of Swords first, which is book 1 in that series. And Warsong is completely for free on Michael Mitchell's newsletter. So I will leave all 3 linked in the description below. And if you're looking for even more fantasy and sci-fi novella recommendations, I did do a full video, which I will leave linked here. Thank you very much for watching. Outro.